Starting lineup, uniforms, and apparel present the WOA Senior AA Men's Hockey League podcast. Hello once again, everybody. Andrew Rogers here, the host of the WOAA Senior AA Men's Hockey League podcast. This is episode number 31. It's great to be back with you guys again on this beautiful Friday. It's been just an outstanding week we've had on the podcast this week. We had Brendan, we had Reed Simmons come in on Monday from the Shallow Lake Crushers. We had Curtis Ron from Milverton on Wednesday. And today's episode is fantastic. General Manager of the Telstra Thunder, Bill Ryan, we're going to introduce him shortly. I am, of course, Andrew Rogers, the host of the podcast. It's great to have you back with us. I want to thank Mitch Scott, his starting lineup, uniform and apparel. Just an outstanding dude, and we're happy to have him on board with us. Like I said, great episode of the podcast coming up today. Let's get you looking ahead to next week. We have Andrew Boyle and Justin Graham coming in from the Durham Thundercats. That's Justin Graham, number 8. On the 22nd, we have Gord Lamont coming in, president of the Saugeen Shores Winterhawks. And then on the 24th, a week from today, Brock Hare and Colton McGuire, the Shelburne Muskies, come into the podcast. The following week, Brady Anderson of the Minto 81s comes in on the 27th. On the 29th, it's first-year head coach Ben Pelek of the Elora Rocks. And then on the 31st, 2 weeks from today, Kyler and Cole Keating, the brothers Keating, come onto the podcast. We're excited to have them on board to come into the podcast as well. Like I say, fantastic episode coming up today. Bill Ryan, General Manager of the Telstra Thunder, they had a GM's meeting on Monday on Zoom, and they discussed some stuff there. So we're really excited to hear what Bill has to say about that and about his Telstra Thunder organization. So that's what we're going to do. Without further ado, we're going to introduce him now, and we're going to get this episode on a roll here, and we're going to get right into it. So like I said, without further ado, my guest for today's episode of the podcast, number 31, we have GM of the Telstra Thunder, Bill Ryan. So it's at this time, I'd like to welcome in my guest on the podcast. It's episode number 31, and we have a real special treat for you. He is the general manager of the Telstra Thunder. His name is Bill Ryan. We invite him into the podcast now. Bill, thanks for joining us.
Hey, thanks for having me.
It's like I say, we haven't had a chance to talk yet, and that was very unfortunate for me because I would have liked to have met you throughout the season. It just didn't work out, but you're here now, and we'd like to. We're happy to have you on. The first question I like to ask everybody before we even get started with anything else regarding the WOA and the Senior Hockey League is just about how COVID has treated you. I mean, I know it treated everybody a bit differently. I just wondered if you could give us an update about how you're doing, how are things been, how's life been under COVID, and now that things are starting to get a little bit better, how you been?
Well, I've been fortunate. Obviously, my family and close group of friends, nobody's been affected by the disease or the pandemic, both with their physical health anyway.
Right.
Obviously, we all have the mental and the lifestyle aspects that it's affected. My own personal life, I've been affected very little at work because we're in the fire life safety business. So everything we do is mandated by the government. So
good. We
took the odd day off here and there to reduce some of the costs of the overhead of the company. We have 9 offices across the province. As you can appreciate, there's a lot of lower level or administrative people that we had to make sure that we kept the resources flowing in to keep everybody working and paid and good. And all the things that go with that. But for the most part, I've been fortunate. I'll knock on wood. Hasn't affected me too much other than it's just changed the way we do things and the way everything happens, much like this Zoom call, or I've done probably 10 meetings this week by telephone or by Zoom instead of in face-to-face like I would normally do. So.
Right. No, this Zoom has been absolutely fantastic, especially for this podcast because it's been really helpful.
Yeah, it's a great tool.
I've had guys that are just like kind of, we put them on a speakerphone and I find that that's not as effective just because I think people are more visual now than they've ever been, and they just want to see what's going on. They want to see the reactions. They want to see the laughter and all that sort of stuff. So these Zoom calls have definitely been a saving grace for me.
Absolutely. Great
so
tool.
We have 2 avenues that we can go down here, Bill. We could talk about the conference call that you guys were on Monday, or we could talk about the season. Which one do you want to hit first?
Well, we can do both if you want, but if you want to start on the conference call on Monday. There's not a lot to talk about, but there is some important information, obviously.
Yeah. So can you fill us in at least about what was discussed?
So yeah, here we had 10 of the 14 teams I think were represented in the call. Okay. some guys couldn't make it, holidays, various things, work,
Sure.
that sort of thing
Yep.
that's going on. But I think the discussion, obviously, the big part of the discussion was COVID-19 and when we're going to get access to our facilities.
Right.
And it's looking like we're probably looking at something in the neighborhood of a December or a January start to any seasons if we have one.
Wow.
However, it's still up in the air. This could all change in a month, right?
You're right.
Our facility has put one ice pad of the 2 in already, but they're saying we're not going to get access to dressing rooms and likely until late October, mid-November,
Right.
Things like that. So obviously, if we can't get dressing rooms into our training facilities and stuff, it makes it difficult. And then, of course, the ice in the Memorial Arena in Telstra has to go in too, which I don't know the schedule for that yet.
Right.
Obviously, if they're not renting all the ice out, they're not going to fill it up. They're not going to put it in, right? So,
of course.
I know minor hockey in some areas is talking a January to May season. So it sounds to me like it'll be wishful thinking for the league if we think we're going to start anytime before late November, early December at the earliest.
Okay.
That's what our guts are telling us. That seems to be the consensus anyway.
Okay.
Again, that could change tomorrow. We could find out that we're going to stage 4, the dressing rooms are open, the ice is in, and we can have our tryouts in September, right? But
yeah, you never know.
I'm an optimist. I'm hoping that's what's going to happen, but I think to be a realist here, we're probably looking at something in late November, early December at the earliest.
Okay.
Which means we probably have to go with a shortened season or a shortened playoff.
That was going to be my next question. Would it be like a half season then? Like 11 games instead of 22?
That's still all up in the air. Obviously, we're not going to get 22 games. And the biggest thing with this being a small town league, right?
Yep.
A lot of these centers come first week of April, they have no ice.
That's right.
So unless the facilities are able to, or their equipment's able to give them ice once the weather starts to warm up, we'll have to either look at, a shortened playoff or a shortened season. I would suspect the shortened season would happen as opposed to the short playoff.
Right.
So, and that seems to be the consensus around the table in the discussions anyway. But again, right now it's all conversation until the municipalities tell us what we can do.
Of course. Did the question about finances from sponsors come up in the call on Monday?
Well, it always comes up. But right now we have 2 real major concerns as a group, a collective.
Okay.
One obviously is how many of our sponsors are going to be able to give us sponsorship money.
Right.
And those are some of the tasks we're working on now. Obviously, we have to prepare as if the season's starting and see where our finances are.
Okay.
I don't look after a lot of that for the Thunder. I just don't have the time, but I know my colleague does and his spouse, Kathy.
Yeah.
They do a lot of the sponsored conversations. I myself sponsor the team a little bit myself, so that'll still be available.
Okay.
But at the end of the day, if we don't have the dollars coming in or we can't put, a couple hundred people in the building like we do on a typical game, it may be difficult at all for, just speaking for Telstra, to even start the season,
Right.
So.
Yeah, because I would
don't
think
have bottomless pockets, right? So.
Well, I would think that like the two go together. The fact of the financial aspect of it, and the fans in the stands, and the people that pay your gates.
Exactly. It's not a profit-making venture. I don't think there's any team. Well, maybe Clinton. They've done some things at that organization that just packs the building all of a sudden. Obviously, winning is a big part of that.
Right.
I think other than Clinton, I don't think there's many teams that have the resources to be able to operate without as many fans and sponsors as you can get.
It would be really tough, I think.
Yeah, I completely agree. I know in Telstra we certainly don't, because we don't turn a profit. We just make sure that we aren't going broke doing this, right? So
right, and and that's the thing. Like that's the thing about this league. Like it is so great, but the thing is, you just can't do it. You can't operate with no fans. You got to have them. Like
absolutely,
you depend so much on that stream of revenue, and it's just if you don't have it, it's like what do you do?
The revenue is huge, but it also helps to bring the players into the building. When you're recruiting a player, is it easier to get a player saying, hey, we're in Telstra, we get 150, 200 people to a game, or we're in XYZ and we get 30 people to a game, right?
Right. Well,
and
that is –
buildings, the competitive juices don't flow the same way when you haven't got a bunch of people watch what you do. So
well, that is interesting because a lot of guys echo that statement when they're on here because you hear them talk about what it's like to play in the respective towns. And some of them, they'll say, okay, well, when we go to Clinton, it's intimidating. I've heard the words intimidating. I've heard the words exciting because the building's packed. And then, you might go to a place, not to discount Shallow Lake, but you may not get very many people in that shortened stands there. Like, it's just not all the way around like it is in some other buildings. You know what I mean? Like,
absolutely.
So
Hey, if we all could have 400 or 500 people in the building every game, it would be a perfect world. But it's just not every market can do that, right? So,
right.
so you've got to fundraise in any way you can, whether it's sponsorship fundraisers.
Well, and that's the other thing. Like, I know that there's probably got to be a lot of team-oriented sponsor ideas, but with COVID, that's probably had to affect that a number of ways, because you can't have these gatherings, you can't do these events, you can't do anything that involves any potential for not following the distance rules, right?
Absolutely. A lot of these guys do, fish fries, barbecues,
Right.
golf tournaments, and they just aren't happening, or they're happening in a much reduced capacity, which, cuts down your revenue, right? So
no question about it.
I know our major fundraiser for the last few years has been a Rib Fest, and we decided not to do it this year, but we've actually now decided we're going to do a downtown Rib Fest, which is a walk up, get your food, pay, and leave.
Oh, okay.
Do
you have any further details on that right now, or?
My colleague's still working on it, but it's going to be in September, from what I'm being told.
Okay.
So typically we would have the ribbers come down to the park, and we'd have bands and other
I've been to Rib Fest.
and,
I've been to Rib Fest in other places. Yep.
Yeah, so we just did it on a smaller scale than say they did in London or something, right?
Right.
It's a tough grind. It's a tough way to grind it out, and COVID, of course, right now makes it even more difficult to put something like that together. But the ribbers have approached us and said, "Hey, why don't we just bring the booths, set them all up, and let people come in and buy some foods, and we'll make a donation to the team."
Alrighty.
So we're going to give that a go, and I think it's September. If you get Mike Hawley on here, he may be able to fill in a little more details for you. So
yeah, no doubt, it's all good.
But
we'll keep an eye out for it.
Be able to do that, right? So
yep. And like I say, when we were talking before, any sort of league happenings, like especially anything with the GM meetings or anything with anything that is news related, definitely forward it on to me so I can make sure it ends up on the related social
media. Anything that we think the public needs to see, we'll share it.
Yeah.
I have absolutely no problem with that. Right now, again, everything is kind of in flux. Everything's fluid, right? So I'd love to be able to sit here and say, we're going to drop the puck on October 15th, and we're starting against Clinton, and and all those things. But unfortunately, we can't have those answers because we're at the mercy of the government and the health bodies, right? So,
is there?
It's frustrating as heck not being able to plan and be prepared. So
no, yeah, especially if you're one of those types that just live for that. So
I like it to be done, and then I can enjoy the rest of my summer. But it looks like it's just going to hang on. So.
I understand that completely. In terms of is there any sort of merit to say what's going on with the NHL right now that maybe would influence what goes on in this league, or is that the model? I don't know.
I think we're watching what everybody else does. Obviously, it's a little different in the NHL because they have those TV contracts that'll pay some of the bills.
Right.
And, obviously a war chest for things like this. But
sure.
I think we have to pay attention to what other organizations are doing, or else we'll make mistakes or not learn from mistakes that other people have made, or we'll make the mistakes by not paying attention, right? So.
Well, and this is the kind of time where you can't afford to make the mistakes.
Because, absolutely not. Absolutely not.
God forbid something should happen, an outbreak, and it'd just be catastrophic, right?
Well, you have to look at it this way too. I know most buildings, if you look at the demographics of the fans that are in the buildings, they're over 50.
Oh yeah.
Majority of them are over 50.
A lot of them are high risk. Absolutely.
So, you or I go in with the virus, maybe we'll be, I'm over 52, but I'm trying to think I'm better than I am.
Yeah.
But you or I go in as a carrier of the symptoms, but without being sick, could cause problems, right? So we can't take those risks without knowing what's going on.
Just can't take the risk at all. No, you're right. Anything else, I guess, that would have been discussed at this thing on Monday that you want to?
We did kick around. I know you've been following the league for a few years now, so we've been making a lot of changes over the last handful of years to the rule books. Mm-hmm. Last year we had a major rewriting of the manual of operations, which was fantastic.
Yeah.
We just discussed cleaning up some of the language of it. A few rules slipped out when we approved the new rule book that we want to put back in, like having an extra goaltender card, and the movement of players amongst the teams. So mostly just language information and paragraphs being added back to the manual that accidentally came out and that sort of thing.
I want to ask you really quickly about this rule change that went into effect last year, and that was the one where guys were put on different levels, right?
Yes.
Like you had level 1, level 2, level 3. You could only have so much of each.
Correct.
I thought that made this league the most competitive it's ever been. Can you echo that statement? I
agree. It's phenomenal. It was a phenomenal idea, and it took a handful of years for us to hash it out and make that work the way we thought it should work.
Right.
But as a league, I think, last year with the board stepping up and finally helping us put it in place, because we've been kicking it around for 2 or 3 years.
Right.
We really needed to limit the availability of certain types of players to certain types of market. To Telstra being a bigger center, we have 16,000 people, although 8,000 of them are over the age of 55.
Right.
But you get a town like Shallow Lake is a great example. What do they have? A few thousand people to draw from. So
yeah.
if we had 15 pro hockey players retired and living in Tillsburg, how is that fair to a town like Shallow Lake, right?
You're absolutely right.
And the whole goal of the WA in the 75 plus years it's been around is to stay local.
Of course.
So we've been given maybe a little too much leeway to go out and find guys, higher caliber, great players to watch, fantastic players, but too many guys that aren't local to your market, which again affects people in the seats, affects sponsorship, affects everything, and competitiveness across the board.
Yeah, like that's the big thing, right? Is like I say, if you look from one to even 10, any one of those 10 teams could have ended up on that AA side.
Absolutely. Be honest with you, I don't think there was a team in the 14 teams last year that could not have finished in the top 8.
Well, no, and I
like a few little pieces or a few different results, and
I kept saying all season long that Milverton, Shallow Lake, Lucknow all deserve better fates.
I completely agree. We never played Shallow Lake, but we played Lucknow and Milverton, and
we played them twice, and they were 1-goal games.
Milverton for sure. They always play us tough. They always give us some great games. And
I think they would have given Tavistock a real run in that A final.
I have to agree. Tavistock's doing some great things too, though. They are. If any team has figured out a way to start making your team local again, Tavistock is it.
Yeah, and I had Matt Getz on the program there like a week or two ago. Just an outstanding individual, unbelievable hockey player, unbelievable talent.
I was surprised in some of the things he was talking about. So.
Man, he's just he's so cool, and he was a fantastic guest, and it was a lot of fun talking with him.
Yeah, certainly.
And I've talked to Kyle Winnett a ton. He's helped me a ton in terms of Tavistock. So hats off to him. Big shout out to him because he's been nothing short of outstanding as well.
So there's a lot of great organizations in this league. We're just, now we're all kind of getting on the same page and setting things up the way it needs to be set up collectively. And I think the player levels was probably the first step in the right direction to bring the league a little more cohesive. Because, we're all competitive people. We all want to get an edge over the other guy. But at the end of the day, we want as big a league with as many teams as we can have and as many quality players in it without breaking the smaller market teams or the teams in smaller centers, I should say.
No, I get that. I mean, it also is one of the most competitive hockey leagues you could play in at this level, considering you can have guys that come in as a fresh-faced, pimply-faced 19, 20-year-old and play with guys who got grandkids at 43.
Yep, absolutely.
Where else would you find that?
We got guys on our team that are 40, and we had guys on our team that were 21, 22, right?
Exact. That's wild, right?
Yeah.
So let's talk about the season for Tillsonburg because it was a whirlwind of a season. I thought it was a really good one because you guys were right there in the thick of things for the whole entire season. I thought it was just outstanding. Take me through the regular season and how you deem it in terms of success or unsuccess.
I think it's pretty successful. I think our goal was a top 4 finish. Actually, I think our goal the last couple of seasons has been a top 4 finish. I think we have the same issue that every team in this league or every team in senior hockey has, and that's, on paper, you have a phenomenal roster.
Right.
However, on the game sheet at any given night, that roster is so dramatically different that it's tough sometimes to pull out those wins when you really need them.
Right.
And I think we did a much better job this year. When we last were really competitive, we won the league there in 14-15.
Right.
Over your Mapleton Minto.
Thanks, Bill.
81. But anyway, and then of course a lot of guys retired, stopped playing. So you've been building back up as the years go by.
Right.
And I think we were just about there, but again, the commitment issue always rears its ugly head, and it did a little bit all season long and a little bit in the playoffs, right?
Well, I've heard people echo that exact statement more or less, is that the numbers is a huge thing when it comes to a team's success. Commitment,
Absolutely.
Big issue when it comes to success. You got to have guys come out for practice. You got to have those same guys for games.
Yeah, and this year that improved dramatically for us. We had real problems in the last couple of years with commitment, and this year it got much better, and the results showed. Obviously we went from, ninth the year before by a point or two to, sixth?
No, you finished fifth.
Fifth, there you go. See, so many years at this, I start to forget seasons.
No, hold on. No, you're right. 6th place because you played 3rd place Saugeen Shores.
Right.
The matchup of 4 or 5 was Clinton Seaforth.
That's right. So we were 6th, right? So, and I think, we're building. We're getting to where we need to be. Obviously, this COVID-19 thing I think is going to dramatically change the face of all teams, because
Right.
some of these guys are going to get a taste for the time off, and we may never see them again, right? But
You're right.
we got to get younger. We got to bring some of the more local guys in. We're fortunate in Telstra. We have a number of guys coming in out of junior college and ranks and stuff like that. So we're hoping to add some key second, third line pieces that are more local too. So
good. I want to ask you about a couple guys. Chad Swartzentruber, we had him on with his brother Reed, and that was just outstanding. Chad's such a good dude. He's been with the Tillsonburg Thunder organization for quite some time.
I think this is his third season. I think it was.
Yeah, but I mean,
he was with Tavistock a very long time. Yeah.
Right. He spoke very highly of the Thunder organization. I mean, I know he's not exactly an offensively skilled player, but I mean, obviously he's an important guy to have on the team.
Yeah, he's actually more offensive than you might think.
Probably. You're probably right.
Sometimes as a defenseman, maybe too offensive, but
right.
He can really quarterback a power play when he puts his mind to it. He can really shoot the puck, make the passes. But phenomenal guy, really good guy. I've enjoyed having him around. He seems to really understand the game. The guys seem to like to talk to him, listen to him.
Right.
And that's an important thing. We have an incredibly tight dressing room. Our guys all get along pretty darn good.
That's good.
And that's the only way you're going to be successful if they do.
Yeah.
But to the same extent, you're always going to have guys that have differences of philosophies. And,
of course.
Chad likes to have that puck on his stick sometimes a little too much, but he's at the end of the day, he does a lot of things good as opposed to the detriment of the team. He does a lot more better for the team than he does a detriment.
Good.
The rest of us, he's getting a little longer in the tooth and has to adapt.
He's been there a lot. Like you say, he's been in this league a long time.
Game a little bit, and one of these days you'll look back on it and appreciate all these years, I'm sure. So.
Well, I know he said at the end of his podcast that he was coming back. So.
I appreciate that. I wish I'd had a card. I would have slipped it through the computer that day.
That would have been awesome. And then obviously the other one in terms of a player is Ryan Stephenson, because he had an unbelievable year for you guys.
Yeah, Ryan's a unique player in this league, no doubt about it. He's big, he's strong, he's smart as a whip, but he doesn't miss very often. If you put the puck on his stick and he's got the opening, it's going in.
Okay. Right on.
He produces points when you don't even know he's on the ice, just because it's a natural thing, right?
Yep.
You watch the game, you don't see a lot of them, and all of a sudden he's got a goal and 2 assists, right?
Right.
Just in the right place, right time, sees the ice better than some guys,
Well, and I'm sure his offensive prowess can often trickle down and have that effect on other guys as well.
Absolutely, and that's what you want on your team, is players that make other players better, right? So,
absolutely, no question about it.
He seems to find the other guys, and the other guys find him, and chemistry is everything with Ryan. If he's not on the line with guys that he doesn't have chemistry with, it's not the same Ryan Stephenson.
Of course.
At the end of the day, he's a good player. He's been producing a lot of points for us since he's been here, and quite an interesting individual. Quite a personality. He's very sly and sarcastic, but in a funny way. Let's put it that way.
Fair enough. I couldn't have said it better myself if I was in that position. And then obviously you echo this statement, but I think the biggest backbone in terms of the Tillsonburg Thunder has to be Tommy Lee, because he's been there forever. And, what a goalie, unbelievable talent. Some people said single-handedly he was the reason that you guys advanced in the first round against Saugeen Shores. Can you speak to his talent a little bit and his presence?
Tommy's a great goalie. He's getting a little again. He's getting up there a little bit, starting to battle the injury bug a little bit every year. So
sure,
that's starting to affect him a little bit. But when the game is big, you're not going to find much more of a competitor than Tommy. The guy loves to win, and he takes it pretty serious. He can be a difficult guy to have a conversation with on game day, but he shows it on the ice, and he gets it done. But the Saugeen Shores series, I wouldn't say he took it on single-handedly. I think Mike Rebry had a big part in what happened.
Yeah, I heard that as well.
Against Saugeen Shores. But Tommy certainly stole, if not 2 of the first 3 games, he definitely stole 1 of the first games, and stymied and frustrated a number of the Saugeen scorers to the point that let our guys build up some confidence and start scoring at the right times. And
right on.
That's what you need from a goaltender. The guys are confident that they can take a bit of a risk and go try to score at one end, and
No
know
doubt.
they're going to have their back at the other end, right? So
Absolutely. Yeah. How good was that Saugeen Shore series? I mean, I just like looking at it on paper, I was like, man, I wish I could have been at those games. Not because I know what it's like to be in the Plex for a Winterhawks game, and it's outstanding.
absolutely.
But being in Tilsonburg, I can imagine only would have been the same.
This was the first time we've ever faced Saugeen Shores, period, and we didn't know what to expect. So, obviously we had the long bus rides up there and that sort of thing. But I was very impressed with the organization. The hockey on the ice was phenomenal. One of the better series I've ever been involved with in the WOA.
Is that right?
Yeah, as a fan and as watching it, I thought it was phenomenal. I think it could easily have went 7 games. Could easily went the other direction with a few bounces, right?
Of course.
And I think that can be said for most games and most series in this league anymore. The only series I would say was better, and you're going to find this kind of funny, is the year we won the championship in 14-15. We swept Clinton, which was the last time they lost a playoff series in 4 games. In 4 games, but every game was 1 goal, and I think 2 or 3 of them went to overtime or double overtime.
Oh man, no way!
And even though it was a 4-game sweep, that was probably the best series that I witnessed in this league with our 14-15 team and Clinton's 14-15 team.
That's amazing.
And I kind of knew after that series that it might be a while before anybody beats them.
They were just getting.
They added some pieces, and that's what's happened, right? So
yeah, they've been phenomenal, no question. And then obviously, for you guys to match up. So when you went into the matchup against Clinton in the semifinal, you guys played them twice during the season, beat them both times. Was there a lot of confidence? Is that fair to say going into that series that you guys had them?
I think so. I think even though we were down 3-1, I think when the series ended, I believe that it was still going to be a long series.
Right.
6-7 games for sure. I think we had the pieces. Had some injury issues, had some commitment issues, some guys with things going on over the course of the series that couldn't make every game. But
because you guys had to play 3-3 because the schedule got really whacked out there.
Well, the weather killed a game, right?
They did.
And then we had to play 3 games in 44 hours.
I remember that. Chad was talking a bit about that too. He said, "Man, by the time the 3rd game rolled around, my body was killing me."
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And and one of those games we knew we were going to be short a few guys because of a personal thing going on. But by that 3rd game, the guys are gassed. But to the same extent, Clinton had to do the same thing. Other than 2 of the 3 were at home, right? So, I think that's the reason that they won 3 in a row or whatever it was to put them up 3-1.
3-3 to take the 3-1 series lead.
Yeah, I think with a bit of a break, I personally think that we had them right where we want them,
Well,
but it would have been fun to play it out anyway, for sure.
Yeah, so. And again, I felt kind of like it sucked for me because I wanted to be in both places at once. You know what I mean? Like I had my own exciting series going on, the 6-gamer against Shelburne, and then we come back after being down 2-0 to Ripley. But it just speaks to the talent and how good this league is that you want to be in 6 different places at once on any given night.
Absolutely. And I've done that over the years. After we've been eliminated, it's nothing for me and Mike to make a 2-hour drive to go watch a game up in Clinton, or we've done as far as Saugeen Shores for games, or just on a Saturday night because we're not playing, we went go and watch a game. Because what people don't realize, and that's why I appreciate what you're doing, is how good a quality game is on the ice in any of these barns on any given night.
Oh, it's fantastic.
I watch a lot of junior too, and one thing about junior, as it's a game more where the individual skill shines. They still play a team system in a game, but it's a much smarter game at senior. And
absolutely.
You see the talent, you see the guys moving that puck around like it's on a string. It's really underappreciated. I'm hoping with everything you're doing here and things the teams can do that we can improve on people's exposure of it.
Yeah, and that's the thing, right? Is that this league just deserves it so much because the talent is just undeniably good. And that's the thing, is that there is a lot of people out there that don't even know this league exists, and they don't even know games are being played 2 meters from them. It's just, you got to get them in there because they're missing out. And
for $8 to $10, you can go get 2.5 hours of entertainment, right? You can't go to a movie for that. So
and like any other hockey that you go to, the ticket price is going to be higher than that. So it's like, not only that, but what I've always said about this league from day number 1 that I started following, this league is so unique in the fact that, contrary to the myth that sometimes teams pay players to play for them. I'm not going to touch that subject because I know it's kind of controversial, but
Yeah.
the thing is that at the end of the day, the guys that play in this league play because they love the game. They play because they love the town that they want to represent. They play for the logo on the front, not the guy on the back. They love this league and they love the game. Not only that, but they love the people they play in front of, whether it be their families, their cousins, their aunts, their uncles, their grandmothers, their grandfathers. They play for the people and they play because they love the game. You can't get that anywhere else.
If you've got competitive fire, it doesn't matter if somebody's giving you $50 a game for gas or buying you a stick or giving you a paycheck. At the end of the day, you're not going to perform on the ice unless you love the game.
That's right.
I'm not going to touch the whole payroll subject either because it's not something I agree with. But, guys do have expenses. You don't mind buying a guy a stick or something here or there. But at the end of the day, it's all about your competitive fire and your desire to win, right?
Absolutely.
When you're on the ice, the rest of it means nothing.
That's right.
So as an organization, it's our responsibility to get those guys, find those guys, right?
Of course.
But find them ethically and guys that want to be there and want to compete. You can fill your team full of paid guns and lose every game.
Well, that very well could happen. You stack the deck and they could not mesh. That's totally possible.
Yeah.
But it like the thing is that it doesn't create a very fair environment either. Like, not really. I mean, why would guys from Shallow Lake want to drive all the way to Clinton or whatever just to get pummeled? Like, what was it, last year or the year before? One of the games was 18-3 for Clinton over Shallow Lake. And another game.
I've seen a lot of those over the years.
No. I know even another game, Ripley put it to Shallow Lake 15-0. And like, I'm looking at those scores. I'm like, man, I couldn't even imagine being in the building. I don't know if I could handle that. Not only that, but this past season, the very last game of the season, I was doing a recording in Minto, in Palmerston. It was a makeup game that was rescheduled twice between us and Lucknow. And it was the very last game of the season. It determined kind of where we stood, because if we won, we were going to finish in 7th. If we lost, we would have finished in 8th, and we would have played Ripley. Right. But we won. We ended up playing Shelburne, which actually worked out well for Minto. But the thing is, we went in there and we tuned them 11-0. It was 8-0 after the second period, and at that point, I was just like, man, this is hard to watch. Like, I felt bad because I was like, man, like, and it wasn't like the guys on Minto were necessarily putting the screws to them still. Like, they weren't sending out their first line every shift. Like, like,
sometimes
but it was still
goes in.
But it was still hard to watch. You know what I mean? Like,
absolutely. But you have to remember, it is hockey. Sometimes the puck just goes in the net no matter what you're doing.
No, you're right.
But the same, I think that's why we have these new rules in place, so that you can control, although it's a very talented roster from level 1 player to a level 4 player. They're all former juniors and pros. You can control how many you have on a team. And, a Shallow Lake can put 2 former pros on the team, much like a Clinton can now, right?
Right.
Finding them and looking for them, that's a whole other conversation.
No, you're right.
Or how you get them to come to the rink. But at the end of the day, now every team can only have 20 guys with the same criteria.
You're right. And the thing is that at the end of the day, if the team's not willing to do the groundwork to try and get a guy in, that's on them, right?
Exactly. You're only as good as the effort you put in.
Right. And I think at the end of the day, you just, even for a fan's perspective, you don't want to go in and watch a massacre. You'd rather you go in and watch a highly competitive hockey game that may end 6-2, but at least is a good game on the ice.
But at the end of the day, if you don't know who's going to win when you go into the building, that's the best hockey game.
Well, and I think that's fair from last season.
Yeah. You could
on any given night, you didn't know who was going to win.
Yeah, you could have thrown a name in a hat any night and pulled it out, and it wouldn't be surprised if they got 2 points. So.
Oh, absolutely.
That's what we're striving for.
If you had to pick something that you've noticed in the time that you've been with the league, that you've noticed is the biggest change in the time that you've been there, what would you say is the biggest change? Absolutely
the talent level of the players.
Oh, yeah?
When I came into the league originally, I wasn't the GM. The GM was a good friend of mine who passed away, so I took over when he passed away.
Okay.
But when I came into the league helping out the team, we had a 2-fight rule. It was glorified, in my opinion, and this is just my opinion, take it for what you're worth, it was glorified beer league hockey.
Right.
With guys allowed to beat the crap out of each other twice a game.
Okay.
Every team had their 2 or 3 guys that were really phenomenal hockey players, and then they had, 10 guys that were fair to middling,
Mm-hmm.
In the last, I would say, since probably 2012, 2013, every year it's just gotten gradually better, to the point that you see some of these powerhouse teams like Clinton put on the ice for the last few years.
Right.
All, guys with OHL and minor pro experience and university experience. And those guys used to stay away from this league, and now they gravitate to it, right? So
Yeah.
that's the biggest change I've seen since I've been involved, is it go from one type of hockey to a different type. It's all skill and speed and talent now, which I think hockey as a whole across the world is that way now anyway. But
Right.
Kids are learning way more now in skill than they ever did when they were my age, when I was that age.
No question. And that's what I think has made this league so great, is how much it's changed and how much it's improved. Because everything that you guys are doing is trying to improve this game that we continue to support and love. And
That's a goal.
And that's all that matters.
That's a goal. At the end of the day, you want an even playing field and a very skilled roster on every team.
Right.
And everybody playing by the same rules, using the same rule book, and a rule book that's not broken, and that works. And that's, I think, where we've certainly got to.
Yeah, and no question, there's always room for improvement, no question.
Absolutely.
But you can't get everything exactly perfect. But I think that everybody's got this mindset now of what they need to do to make it happen.
Absolutely. And I think more now than ever, I think all the teams are kind of on the same page. Sure, we all still want to beat the crap out of each other.
Well, naturally.
We're all on the same page when it comes to doing the right thing for the league, I believe.
Yeah.
We've had our challenges over the last handful of years with errors, mistakes. You can call it whatever you want.
Well, that's like, how are you supposed to?
We've closed most of those loopholes now, and we move forward, right?
But it's like, how are you supposed to improve without making mistakes?
Absolutely. You just learn from it, move on.
Exactly. So. And the thing is that, like, obviously the silver lining with that is that if you're going to don't make the same mistake over and over again without actually doing anything to improve on it or learn from it.
That's right. The definition of insanity, right?
That's right. So, yeah, exactly. So in terms of like this league in general, I mean, it's obviously so great you spoke to that. If you had to sell somebody on the idea of wanting to join this league, like there's a lot of young kids that are just coming out of junior that are looking for a place to play. What would you say to them to try and get them to say either come to Tillsonburg or in this league in general?
I think the biggest reason that kids or players continue to play hockey is, one, they love the game. They have that competitive fire and passion in their belly, and they don't want to go play, beer league down the street with, the 40-year-old guy like me, with a 50-year-old guy like me who's carrying around that extra keg,
Right.
They want to play. They want to play competitively. They want to keep stoking that competitive fire,
sure.
And they want to keep learning the game because we're always learning. Even at my age, we're always learning something about the game. But I think the most important thing in this league, and I think any league, if you go to the blue line room or you go down by the dressing rooms, is the social aspect.
Right.
All these guys become, most of them become lifelong friends, or they do everything together during the course of the season. They party. Of course, you've got married guys versus single guys, but
sure.
At the end of the day, there's it's a camaraderie. It's a clique, a community, whatever you want to call it.
Right.
It's all about having a good time, stoking the competitive fire, and still playing the game you love, right?
Absolutely. Can you speak a little bit about like what goes on behind the scenes in terms of any sort of team? Like, there's a lot of work that happens behind the scenes to make it happen. I was wondering if maybe you could tip your hat off to a couple guys, like to the Thunder organization and some of the people that make that happen.
Sure. Well, obviously there's a lot of us behind the scenes. You got volunteers like, obviously our president, Mike Hawley, who's the team owner, president, whatever you want to call him.
Right.
Puts in a lot of time and a lot of resources. His wife, Kathy, obviously myself. My wife will help with things when she can, but she helps by letting me not be home on the weekends.
That's a huge
There's a lot of volunteers. You got the guys selling the 50-50 tickets, whether it's Vince or Joe or any of those guys. You have the people selling sponsorships. There's probably 10, 15 people on any given time that are doing things for the team. We have Mike and Scotty in the dressing room have been there forever, since going back. It's got to be almost 20 years now since the days of the AAA team that Tillsonburg had.
Right.
20 plus years probably.
Sure.
Those guys are invaluable. They make the players, make sure everything's ready for the players, equipment's moved. All the volunteers, right? No one volunteer is any more important than the other, but there's so much that people don't see that goes on just to be able to put this team on the ice, or any team on the ice, run the league, and put the game out there for people to enjoy.
And not only that, but to have more people involved, word of mouth is everything. And, I mean, no question, it translates into having a team be successful at the end of the day.
Completely. And you know what? The more people that you get exposure to, doing things like podcasts and social media and websites, the more new volunteers you'll find, because let's be honest, a lot of your volunteers are getting older as well as your fan base and your players, and it brings in new players, new volunteers, new fans, new sponsors. All those things are so necessary to survive.
So if you could divulge for us a little bit, like what kind of plans are being discussed or in place for when we do return to play here for the WOAA Senior AA Men's Hockey League?
By plans, what do you mean?
Like, is there stuff being discussed, like stuff that like is maybe sort of in the works? Like, is there, things that are being discussed, like rule changes or something like that?
We've had a very little communication other than emails and the Zoom meeting last was Monday.
On Monday, yeah.
There are some rule changes being kicked around, but I think we did so many things last year to correct the rule book that there's not a lot to change this year. Okay. We've got a couple of rules that we got to look at, like the grandfathering of players that would fall into certain categories.
Right.
We got guys in our team. I'll use Travis Elizabeth as an example. He's 40 years old, but he played in the AHL 12 years ago.
Right.
So if he wasn't grandfathered, we would have to put him in as a former pro player, as a level 1 player, which Travis is a good player. He's no longer the Travis that came out of the AHL.
I get it.
But so we're talking about, do we keep the grandfather rule? Do we get rid of the grandfather rule? Do we? Because last year, a lot of teams grandfathered players in so that they could use other players in those categories, right?
I understand that. You got to
that's being discussed, that kind of stuff. Adding that 26th card we had for years for the third goaltender, that emergency goaltender, if you will, that's got to come back in. You get an injured goaltender and all of a sudden you're going to games with one goalie. It's a challenge.
Well, and I know
last year a couple times. So.
Right, and I know Petrolia, for example, they struggled with the goalies last year because in that series against Lucknow on the A side and the first round, they had two goaltenders that had kids on the same weekend that they had to be in Lucknow.
Yeah. And that's tough.
That is tough.
Yeah, that's tough. And we always had that rule, but last year when we, not hastily, but when we spent so much time redoing that rule book with the help of a consultant, some things fell by the wayside by accident, and it was too late to put them back in. So, we're looking at putting some of those things back in.
I understand that.
I'm also a firm believer in this league that players, if you don't have use for a player, you should make them available to another team.
Oh, I agree with that.
If a guy wants to play in this league, and, something we had in prior years was, if I sent a player to Shallow Lake, for example, and they had an empty card, they'd send me an empty card back. Well, we accidentally wrote that rule out of the manual as well.
Oh, so I get it.
Those kind of things need to get back in the rule books if all the teams agree to it. If they don't, then we'll leave it the way it is.
Of course. That's the thing. Group consensus. That's the only thing.
Absolutely.
The only way it's going to work.
Absolutely.
I do know that there is this, what sometimes gets spoken about is whether or not there's an opportunity for more teams to join this league. Is that even something that's being discussed or potentially,
Every year I hear rumors, that we've been as many as 20 teams since I've been involved in this league.
Oh, okay.
But every year you hear rumors that there's a team applying from here or there or anywhere. But unless they get their application in by that, I think it's the middle of May 15th deadline to be discussed and voted on at the AGM, they can't come into the league, right?
Of course.
I heard this year we had a couple of teams inquiring, but they decided to back off when this whole COVID thing's started.
Sure.
I've heard rumors of Stratford. I've heard rumors of Strathroy, but at this point, it's all conjecture or rumors because I don't know what they applied to Al and the board, right? So, I'm all for having more teams, but having more teams in the right places.
Well, that's the big thing. So that was what I was going to ask you.
Too many clusters already.
Well, is that the big thing with bringing a new team in? Is that they're going to take players away from other already existing teams?
That's always a possibility, right? If you put a team in the wrong spot. You're going to choke players off that were going to other teams.
Right.
Now, the new roster levels, of course, alleviate some of that, but then it's going to give one team an advantage of, picking the cream of the crop, let's say. And then the other guys, drive on by to the next team or whatever. But at the end of the day, I think we need to keep it as local and as small as possible. Many places like to think that Telstra is too big to be in the league, but what I always like to tell people is that you have to remember half of the population of Telstra is retired seniors.
And they can't play in this league anymore.
We have two massive retirement communities that were built that became bedroom communities for people from the GTA and London.
Right.
And those people can't play hockey. So they can buy tickets, though. We're working on that.
Oh, well, good. All right. Bill, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on this episode of the podcast. I'll leave it to you. I'll give you the floor if you have any last words before we sign off.
I just want to say thanks. Obviously, I think everybody's thanking you to death here for for what the work you're doing. But I think you can never get enough thanks when you're putting your time and your effort in, and with little reward other than smiles on all of us when we talk to you, right?
It's worth 1,000 words, man.
I really appreciate that. I think one of these days one of us needs to turn around and turn this podcast into an interview of Andrew.
Well,
find out what makes Andrew tick and what's going on with Andrew. So.
Now there is a rumor, and I'll put it to bed. When I have Gord Lamont on here next week, he's actually going to turn the tables on me. He already told me that. So.
Oh, did he? There you go. Well, I thought about doing that today, but we had too many other things with this Monday meeting to talk about.
No, it's all good, man. We'll get you back on here, and you can ask me any question you want. That's totally fine.
Excellent.
All right. So it's at this time I'd like to thank my guests for coming on the podcast, episode number 31, GM of the Tillsonburg Thunder, Bill Ryan. Bill, it's been a pleasure. We'll have you back, and enjoy your weekend, pal. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Yes. Once again, I want to thank Bill Ryan for coming on from the Tillsonburg Thunder to the podcast today. It was great getting to speak with him, and we'll have him back for sure because he's got a lot of great things to say about things in general with this league and how great it is. So upcoming on the podcast, the next time we'll see you is on Monday. We have Andrew Boyle of the Durham Thundercats. He's coming on with his teammate Justin Graham, who wears number 8 of the Durham Thundercats, as mentioned. It's going to be a great episode with those two. I really look forward to that and all the episodes because they are just fantastic. So once again, I want to thank Bill for coming on. I want to thank Mitch Scott, his starting lineup, Uniform and Apparel. Always want to thank you guys, the viewer, for watching yet another episode, putting up with me and all the guests that come on here. We have a ball of a time, and we really do appreciate your viewership, so thank you very much for that. I'm Andrew Rogers, the host. Thank you very much for watching. We'll see you on Monday. Have a nice weekend, and be safe out there, everyone. Until next time, take care.